way I'm going. There ain't got no way, I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No, ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No, ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No. There ain't got no way, I'm gonna make.
Okay, great.
Okay, so Thomas R. Wilson is a writer, business owner, advocate, sensory-friendly event specialist, and community leader. His work within the neurodiverse and mental health communities has brought him international acclaim, and he worked as an advocate, has reached government recognition. While his work is just beginning, he has partnered with over 40 businesses and is helping to carve out a specific niche that offers great value to the community. Finally, while his work is designed for undeserved communities, he welcomes all to attend his work and events. As a young individual living with mental health struggles in Manchester, New Hampshire, I was no stranger to bullying, the trials of living in a system that would not work with me, and the complications that come with neurodiversity. However, I had a passion for stories and the images within that took me away from the pain of feeling different in a world that had not yet embraced the differences it does now. In the words of poetry, novels, and music, I have found a home where insults weren't thrown at me, where I knew my strengths against a world that didn't tell me I couldn't and I would be a failure. All the while, those who were to support me called me a monster and a mistake. Where the hatred where the hatred others had for me for my diagnosis was tossed at me like rocks against a window. Yet in all my years, stories held out hope for me. They inspired me to speak, to feel as if the gem of words hidden in my desolate heart would flourish and grow to great worth. As I grew, I began to share my stories more, and with those stories came absolute confidence and real hope. So I would no longer give the whole synopsis. We would let Thomas R. Wilson come on the platform now and share a little bit about who he is.
Hi, Thomas.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm a little bit tired, but I'm having a good day.
I like that. I like that.
Yes,
Although you
the
may physically feel challenged, your perspective is that it's all good. We appreciate that, and we appreciate you and Gabrielle and I and our producer and the audience, of course. Thank you for being here with us, making the time to share your expertise and your personal stories and the way you have impacted people's lives. Thomas, I really want to get deep into some of the things that I've seen on your profile, but the main thing I want us to understand is the challenges of neurodiversity. I want you to give us the clinical as well as the personal aspect of it so that people can understand what you had to go through to get to where you are today. Help us, please, to understand it.
Definitely. So I should say I am not a diagnostician, so always take a little bit of what I say with a grain of salt.
All right.
But myself personally, I grew up much of my life, first of all, not knowing that I had neurodiversity. It wasn't a big term when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
We always suspected my own autism and my own, ADHD and things. I spent a lot of my life in the diagnosis kind of circle that a lot of people get in, where one doctor says one thing, another says another, and then somebody breaks a tie, and then the opinion changes. So I dealt with that a lot. Um, but I have also lived with my own mental health struggles. Well, I shouldn't say struggles. I like to say I thrive with them now. On
Uh-huh.
top of that, I like to believe, I have my own mental health diagnoses, anxiety among others. And At the point I'm in my life is very different than when I was a kid. I was definitely labeled and I went from being a young youth who people said was going to be like a genius and going to achieve all these things in life to facing a significant loss and losing someone very close to me. And then
Hmm.
my diagnosis really kicked in at that point by
Wow.
the time I was about 8 years old. Um, my teachers then changed their tune pretty quickly. I went from that, that genius A+ student to them telling me that I was going to end up in jail or I
Hmm.
wasn't focused enough or
Yeah.
my behavior was a problem. And by no means was I a saint. Like, I'm not trying to paint this as me being the best kiddo ever in my behavior. As with many people with mental health like diagnosis, it's a journey. We learn how to maintain it as we go.
Hmm. Yeah.
But that was my experience in the education system. Took a really strong disliking to school because of that,
Right.
and that persisted up until about my junior senior year in the United States, where I had some really supportive teachers. I found a program that worked for me. I remember my math teacher. I've never been a math guy at all,
Hmm.
but my algebra teacher would literally sit with me and tutor me through lunch so that I could pass algebra. I had a writing teacher who, we had a rocky start, but she always, she changed that narrative of me being a problem to I had immense potential again. And my principal in high school, I miss him every day. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But he was one of the big influential factors in school that changed a lot of my own self narrative. He fought for me tooth and nail. He actually more than once went to the school board, if I'm remembering correctly, and said, "We're not going to get rid of the student. He's
Yeah.
too good to have in the school."
Okay.
Um, and since then, I graduated college, started a business, work in healthcare, many things many people said I never would. I'm a public speaker getting to talk about this, but on top of that, I also do events. I also teach. I run a lot of different programs, all built around the mentality that we can't look at youth through those negativity based mindsets, right? Or adults or whoever. We have to kind of erase the problem mindset that so many
Hmm.
people are labeled with
Yeah.
and actually work with them, have those conversations with the individual, teach those real life skills, teach those assets to becoming an adult with a wide variety of mental, physical, spiritual, cognitive, all these skills that we need.
Hmm.
Um, and since then, it's kind of been a whirlwind. It's been a lot of work, a lot of hard work. I'm still at a day job that I've been at for
Yeah.
12 years,
Yeah.
but it's been a beautiful few years since 2021 when I opened my business. And every day, it is a testament, not just for myself, but for the people around me, how much a strength based and empathy focused mindset
Hmm.
can do in this world.
Wow. Thank you for being so vulnerable, Thomas. I can feel your
Yes.
passion and it's
Yes.
engaging. It really is a pleasant thing to be able to engage with you on this platform. And you have given us so much to begin with. Gabriella, I know you're waiting anxiously because I see that you've been moved as well. So let's go. Let's go.
Yes, so I just want to talk about in the education system. I know that we have a lot of youths in our society here who, may be discouraged by the things that, that maybe be said to them as well, and they may be bullied as well from teachers, from other students, and they may. How can we help them to reframe, their thinking and recognize that their value is not defined, by what is said to them? How can we help them in reframing of their mindsets?
So I think the first thing it's so easy to say we can, spread kindness, we can spread empathy, we can talk to them, help them build their confidence. But I think it really starts with those people saying those things.
Right.
We
Wow.
need to change the way that is. If that's being communicated, that's always going to be communicated, and if that's
Hmm.
viewed as okay, that's not going to change unless that is confronted. Then I think we need to teach those people how to apply those skills, like the strength-based mindset, how to alter their opinion of this youth, how to work with the youth first and foremost, and then we can go with the youth. We have to make sure that there's a solid foundation and a solid framework for those youth to be supported going forward. And I would say for those youth, I think we need to show them their worth. We need to give them opportunities to thrive. I know when I work with students, one of the first things I try to do is make an interest around pop culture or something they like and acknowledge that that's worthwhile. I then over time work really hard to encourage the ideas, the sharing of ideas, the openness.
Yeah.
One of my favorite phrases that I use in a lot of my programs, if not all of them, is we're not going to try to be perfect, but we're going to do our best.
Yeah.
And sometimes people get sick of me saying that, but I find that so important, especially as we have so many youth that have such a toxic sense of self-perfectionism.
Yeah.
I have it myself. I can work on a project for 20 hours, still not feel content on it.
Wow.
And I think the last thing we have to do is help those youth. And I could say something really generic and say give them confidence or set them on their path. But I think we have to educate youth on where they have resources, help them find those resources, and help them understand how to access those. That doesn't just mean, finding a location like a YMCA or something. That means creating a game plan. That means creating a pattern of behavior and techniques. And that also includes helping those youth understand that they may stumble, they may fall, but they can get back to where they want to be because no human's journey is perfect. And I also like to say the right pathway is often confused with the easy pathway, right? We want to believe that if it's on the right path, it's going to be easy the whole way. That's not accurate. Sometimes it's going to be hard. It's going to be bumpy. It's going to take refocusing, new dedication. But those are some very basic ways.
Wow.
Wow. Just to highlight where you shifted the whole dynamic and you spoke about, addressing the persons who may say the negative things. In your experience, what would have worked or what are some strategies that could be implemented that will help those who may be saying the negative things because they may be saying it and not aware of the impact that it has on a child? What are some strategies you would have done or experimented or have tried and it would have worked that would help that person who may be termed that the perpetrator in that situations when it comes to the educational system?
So the first thing, and I think this is huge, is understanding why those things are being said. It's so important to know that these are people in a position of authority, in an institution of power. I'm not just like talking about government or anything. I'm talking about this is a place where youth are supposed to go to be safe, to be understood, to have some connection. Our school systems are very broken. I could go on and on about that.
Yes.
But if you have a person who is quite literally supposed to be able to keep that person alive for 8 hours a day, 6 hours a day, whatever, and in their frustration, they're lashing out at someone who could be as young as 5 years old.
Wow.
That's a real problem.
Yeah.
On top of that, I think it really comes down to first having a conversation with that person, understanding how, if they don't understand why they're doing it, help them understand. And I'm not saying like create the pathway for them, help them explore why that's happening. I think on top of that, it also comes down to understanding the kind of institutional bias, right? We have a lot of schools, a lot of programs with youth. They don't get a lot of funding. They don't get a lot of support, and that can play into things. But one of the things we can do very easily is help people kind of understand that there is bias out there. It's not necessarily, when we hear bias, so often it's attributed to someone being, horrible or abusing someone or something. It's really important to note bias is a very human reaction.
Yeah.
And I think when we look at the idea of bias and actually treat it with the respect and empathy it deserves in a person, we can create communal conversations and we can explore our own bias better. And another thing that I'll say is with that person, if they're willing to have that conversation, I think another huge thing is also having that person have a conversation with the youth that's been harmed. If that child or if that teen or whatever age actually feels comfortable to coming back and having that genuine, open, healing conversation, that situation needs to be treated with the utmost respect. It needs to be viewed as like if it was in a group of adults, someone had hurt someone and they went back, we're not going to yell, we're not going to snap, we're going to have systems in place to make it calm. Needs to be the same thing. We need to learn how to undo those behaviors, undo those mindsets, and it's a valuable thing to show that individual undoing that in front of and in cooperation with the youth.
Wow.
Wow. It's a sense of it's something like a restorative kind of model that you would use.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Wow.
Thomas, I am almost on every episode, we have to ask people this I think, very important question because it spells around having a right mindset, but also having a better understanding of what our main challenges are in life. And the question really is, what are some of the challenging misconceptions that people have about those who are challenged based on the concepts of neurodiversity? And how do you navigate that on a day-to-day basis?
So I think one of the biggest things, and this goes back to communication, is the idea. So there's a few things that I'll try to highlight quickly. One of them is that the brain is just obviously going to behave in a rational, coherent, easy to understand way.
Right.
Unfortunately, for a lot of people with neurodiversity, when they're upset, when they're worried or scared, lashing out is a normal thing. But so often it isn't viewed from this perspective of what that person is trying to say. If someone's upset, it's so important to try to explore with them why they're upset. I know personally when I was a kid, one of my biggest struggles was there wasn't a lot of people teaching me how to communicate when I was upset. It was so often letting me rant or rave and then punishing me.
Wow.
Despite so often me trying to communicate something I was desperate to say,
Yeah.
especially if I was anxious. Another key thing in that I always like to say is just because someone doesn't understand doesn't mean it's their fault.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is that you can talk to someone on a regular basis like you and I are talking, but if they don't understand, there can so often be just environmental triggers going around. There can be a bit of anxiety running through the brain. There can be the desire to want to understand what you say, but the brain doesn't always process the information in the same capacity or quickly.
Yeah.
On top of that, there's also so often we have the term like attitude or bad attitude, stuff like that. But it's also, there's actually a very interesting correlation, and that so often people aren't willing to work with the neurodiverse community because they are themselves frustrated.
Yeah.
And it's a natural response, but it's so interesting when someone who is neurotypical or has something else, and they're trying to say one thing, and then the other person is listening, and they get frustrated. Those conflicts that can arise, they're really fascinating because they show two sides of people who are trying to communicate, often something very similar or something to seek a solution. But so often, going back to communication, processing, and societal stuff, we're taught to be angry or we're taught to be upset
Hmm.
We're taught to be quiet if we have questions. And I think so often those communications break down. I'm going to be honest. I got frustrated at a family member earlier because I was tired. I
Yeah.
knew I had a lot to do today,
Wow.
and I got frustrated. And I tried to communicate something that wasn't effectively done. But
Okay.
at the same time, my family member got annoyed, and I had to leave that moment. But I
Hmm.
was processing information in such a deep way
Yeah.
that all I wanted to say was I was too tired to have the conversation, and it
Hmm.
came out the wrong way. So we
Wow.
also have to look at the lens of the fallout from these conversations as not always intentional, even if we're taught to be angry, which is in of itself its own problem. But we have to also understand the bias that can happen after that conflict and understand the value in having clear cut, honest, emotional conversations and finding a genuine pathway to healing.
Wow. I feel like Thomas is putting on a clinic here, Gabriela. I mean, this stuff is so good.
Yes.
Honestly,
Yes.
Thomas, it feels so connecting, so resonant. I'm really, really, really happy that you came on. And so I'm just gonna give you a minute to take a deep breath, and we're gonna ask our producer to help us show the thought of the week. We're gonna just play it out, and we'll be back with our guest Thomas Wilson in a moment as we ask the producer to bring up the thought of the week. And there it is. It says, yesterday's victories cannot be celebrated today, but tomorrow's achievements can be today's triumphs. Yesterday's victories cannot be celebrated today. It has to be celebrated on the day that the victory took place. But tomorrow's achievements can be today's triumphs, meaning what we ever accomplish and achieve today can also carry us by momentum into doing better by tomorrow. So that's the thought of the week, and we thank you for your continued commitment and support. And now I'm going to invite Gabriela to take over some of this session as we go back to our guest, Thomas Al Wilson, the episode entitled The Benefits of a Strength Based Mindset with Thomas Wilson. Gabriela?
Thank you so much. So, Thomas, can you just explain what the strength-based mindset is all about, and what is that model all about, so that persons who may be listening could have a clearer understanding about that thought.
Absolutely. So I think for some people, when they hear strength based mindset, it can kind of be perceived as um, just you're only giving compliments, right? You're only working to honor the person's strengths, the positives. You're looking for the good and all of the bad. But I think, in my personal opinion, a strength based mindset is best utilized when things are hard. And I can give an example here. So, in one of my classes, I teach a class where it is focused on fun writing for youth who don't like to write. And I do a lot of events for adults as well. I also do a world building group, but I'm focused on the student. So first couple of classes, often, especially with those I work with, it's very quiet. A lot of people don't want to talk, and a lot of it is a lot of the students I work with have dealt with a very rough educational journey. And so one student in particular, I'm not going to say the name just out of respect for
Yes.
privacy, but this individual, he was very shy. As we went, the first session was often he would apologize over and over for not understanding something. He would be worried about writing because his experience with writing has been very judgmental, very harsh. And by the first session, we got a group. I was able to. He would share a couple thoughts, and what I did was I would say, "That is a wonderful idea. Thank you for sharing." Um, Simple compliments like this are really great for establishing trust. But another aspect of it is he had technology issues a few times, and he would apologize, and I would say, "It's okay. We can work past this and move into, when your technology is better, it's better." And so over the first few sessions, I would watch him smile more. He was able to begin sharing and writing in class more and more. Alongside him, there was also a student who hated to write. And so what we did was establish the fact that all this student could do is come up with a game plan for what he wanted to write. This other student, that is what that class would be. And so these people would listen to lessons over the course of like 4 or 5 lessons. I noticed they started sharing more and more. People started showing up to class early. They would smile as I would greet them, as I would do like a nice hello kind of smile. And now, about these students have largely been showing up for about 20 weeks now. And I can tell you, I had seen some of these writers grow from writing like a paragraph, that's all they were comfortable writing, to writing 2-3 pages of creative, inspirational messages or unique science fiction. And one of them in particular is now the one I was first mentioning, has been here almost every week. He is one of the most proactive writers in the group. He turns in homework every day, every class. He is able to ask questions confidently. One of the great signs that I saw over the course of this time is he would ask questions. I would support him with something positive. When there was room that needed to grow, I would point that out, but I would support that with positives and growth and recognition of that growth. And something I'm really excited to say, I was in this class and we were brainstorming ideas, and he said, all right, can you give me a title to write with? I said, okay, what do you think of X, Y, and Z? And he said, yes. And then I asked him, what title do you think that I should write along with you? He beamed with joy, super happy, and he gave me a title. Not only, in my opinion, does that show strength, comfort, and pride, that also shows a development and a trust of this. So very much a strength-based model is designed about supporting people, not necessarily ignoring those hard moments, but finding a productive and supportive pathway forward, creating game plans, and acknowledging that we don't need to hover and perseverate on the negative. We can build skills, we can build our voice, we can build whatever we're wanting to do by supporting things to an empathetic but also positivity focused mindset.
Wow.
Wow.
How in those situations, how do you balance celebrating the strengths of those students or the individuals that you interact with the need to acknowledge the areas that they may need improvement in?
So to celebrate, what I like to do is provide genuine moments of encouragement. So often youth, adults, teenagers, whatever age, we're so in tuned on understanding when someone is genuinely encouraging us. It's a very human reaction. And so I try not to overdo it. I try not to, be overly complimentary. But what I like to do is work in things like, thank you for sharing, or I want to honor that. And then I will provide a simple moment of encouragement, like, this is amazing. Congratulations. I'm so proud of your growth. And then also, what I like to do to celebrate is to kind of step back and just show my genuine human appreciation, whether that's smiling when I see something we're smiling at, whether that's honoring an opinion that's truly great. But I think it's also understanding how to acknowledge a human being, right? We can be given cake and presents and all this stuff as many times as we want. We'll get sick of it. But when we show genuine kindness, like genuine human connection for a success, that is far more substantial. And a lot of people don't have that very often. Another thing that I also try to do, especially if there's room for growth, is understand that that person is not that issue, that they're not that problem, that worry, that fear, and that even if something goes really wrong, understanding that we can collect back together and create a culture of empathy, even if that empathy is gone for a moment, right? Like I work with a lot of people, they have brief moments of frustration or worry, but when we can create a space where people know they're valued, know that they're going to return, and their brief momentary lapse is not going to impact your opinion of them, that's huge. And that has lasting and resounding effects that also contradict what is a very deficit based mindset that people of any age are often so exposed to.
Wow. Wonderful. Wonderful. So, Thomas, I'm looking at the different aspects of techniques that you use and some of the stuff that you have found to be helpful with the people that you work with, particularly the younger ones. How can we set up a sensory friendly space? And what are the benefits of actually doing that so that we can create that kind of atmosphere for people who are challenged with some level of neurodiversity?
I love that question. So I think when we think of sensory friendly spaces, it's so easy to go to neurodiversity. But I think sensory aspects are such a human reaction.
Okay.
Part of that being, I mean, if any of us had a flashlight in our eyes, we're going to wince, right? We're going to be thrown off.
Yeah.
Or if there's super loud music, that can be overstimulating. For those with neurodiversity, sensory friendly spaces are valuable in that they can help the brain decompress. But I always like to go to concerts as kind of an alternative mindset. Like concerts are great. I love concerts. There's a sense of community. There's a musician that you get to listen to and thoroughly enjoy.
Yeah.
There's an idea of fun and pride in things. But if you've never had sensory overload, you may not know this, in that they can be loud. There's thousands of people potentially in one space.
Yeah.
Sometimes if they are extremely loud, that means the whole space is loud and visually jarring. If you spent thousands of dollars to go somewhere and then you have to leave and you're overstimulated and there's nowhere where you can go, especially if you don't know anyone there, and you're lost, you're overstimulated, you spent thousands of dollars guilting yourself to stay there even though it's too much, then you have to decide between leaving or going. And if you leave, you may be in a new area. You might have to take a Lyft driver or find another way to get home. All of this weighing on the brain and the emotion.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
My kind of the way I set things up, and I say this is for everyone because it very much is. I think we've all had some kind of experience like that, as we get older. So what I try to do is find a good community space that has soft, gentle lighting if possible. I make sure that there is a safe space for those people to go if they need to decompress for a couple minutes, even if it's just in the corner. If they need to fidget or move or pace, I have that. But on top of it, it's also on knowing how to set up a space, how to use chairs and spaces and things so that people have space, they don't feel clustered together. And on top of that, it's once again goes back to human connection. I said this a lot, but I love communication. Knowing how to ask people in those moments of stress and worry what they need in a way in which they'll trust you, or having a vantage point, a safe place for them to go if they need to go home, having that resource or that ability to give them that. On top of also checking in with people, helping to establish that they have someone they can rely on if they're worried and they don't know how to get home. Having someone throughout an event that they can talk to, understands their journey, and understands the needs of anxiety. But also, even if it's like Dungeon Dragons, storytelling, whatever it is, having someone that you can look to that can understand your anxiety, your overstimulation, and address and adopt the plan somewhat. These are all things that I provide. And again, I love concerts, but they can so often be kind of a great example for the exact opposite of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. We appreciate you, Thomas. Gabriella?
Okay, so there are some people, they may have a hard time identifying, what they are good at, some of their strengths. What are some practical ways they can discover what they naturally excel at?
So I would say, so if you've never heard of the show, it might be a bit like out there. But there's a show called Adventure Time. It was very popular on Cartoon Network for a long time. But there's a character that I love. The show is kind of like a very deep philosophical show, but set in a very much fantasy world. And there's a character named Jake the dog who has been quoted as saying, being really bad at something is the first step to getting really good at something.
Mm.
And that's kind of my motto to that. I would always say try new things. If you don't, I think a huge aspect of this is whether or not you enjoy something, right? When we enjoy something, we will keep doing it. We will
Yes.
keep practicing. We will put in the work. We will put in the effort. And I've known many people who are very young who have immense potential, but they don't enjoy that enough to keep going on it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with adults. I would also say if it's something that you can draw healthy boundaries with, that's even better. So often, so many people are programmed to think that they have to be on camera or they have to be the YouTuber or they have to be the person talking. But there's something really valuable as well in understanding that if you fail or don't do good at something, there may be something else in that talent that you have great skill in. I've tried to be the YouTuber. I've had my various degrees of success. I've tried a lot of different things. Part of that is by honoring, just stumbling around, finding something I want to try. But now what I do is very different than what I did then. And I had different methods of trying something that I'm now not doing. And I think it is so often when you're trying lots of things, when you practice those mindsets and you understand what you love, what you want to do, it's very important to understand the boundaries within that so you don't burn yourself out and
Wow. Yes.
understand how to create a sustainable platform to keep going on that.
Wow.
Wow.
Wonderful. So, Gabriela and Thomas, we're going to take another break now and we're going to share some vital information about Double Impact. And so that we bring everyone up to scratch on our core competencies as well. So, I know that our producer would have lined it up and we can have that video played now and we can get a little breather and drink some water, and we're going to get back with the last part of the program entitled The Benefits of a Strength Based Mindset with Thomas Wilson.
Life has a way of throwing challenges at us, whether it's emotional struggles, difficult decisions, or simply feeling stuck. But what if there was a place where you could find not just solutions, but also the tools to create a brighter, more confident future? That's what Gabriela's Double Impact Solutions is here for. Our tagline is mentoring minds, empowering lives. It's more than just words. It's the heart of what we do. We combine counseling to help you heal and process life difficulties with mentorship that offers practical guidance for your personal growth and future success. It's about building strength for today and clarity for tomorrow. We also understand that everyone's journey is different. That's why we offer both secular counseling and faith-based counseling grounded in Christian principles for those who desire a spiritual foundation in their healing process. No matter your preference, we meet you where you are. At Gabriela's Double Impact Solutions, mental health is our priority because we know it's the foundation for everything else. Whether you're navigating personal challenges, seeking direction in your career, or striving to build emotional resilience, we are here to help you strive. Solutions, healing, and a future filled with purpose. That's what you'll find at Gabriela's Double Impact Solutions. Visit us today at www.gabrielasdoubleimpact.com to start your journey because we are mentoring minds, empowering lives. Let's grow together.
Wow, wonderful, 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 wonderful. And we are live back again, people, in Breaking Out of Depression. We are in season 3, And we have Thomas R. Wilson as our guest. He's the expert on the benefits of a strength based mindset with Thomas Wilson. So, Thomas, I want to bring you back in on the conversation again, and also Gabriella. Thank you all for being here. Now, with regards to the future, Thomas, are there any new things that you're working on, any new projects? What does the future look like for the stuff you're currently doing now?
Yeah, so I'm currently working on a few online classes for my website. I'm very excited about them. One of them in particular is on sensory friendly storytelling. I'm also working on creating some camps as well as some new D&D groups. A big thing for me this year, especially with some of the things happening around the world, is to expand my reach in some ways that are not traditionally done by me, including vendor opportunities, more public speaking, but also engaging with the community on a new level in a new variety of ways. On top of that, for me, a big thing is also getting on things like this more and having these conversations, meeting new people, and getting to explore these topics.
Wonderful. Thank you. Gabriella? We are not hearing you clearly, Gabriella.
Sorry, hear me now?
There you go. There you go.
All right, so when it comes to parents of neurodivergent children who often feel helpless when their child may be bullied at school, or at home, how can they use the strength based mindset or approach to support their child emotionally?
So I think the first thing, I know I mentioned this going back with people who were, um, being harsh on youth. I think a big thing as well is having time for parents to step back. We live in a world where there's so much judgment towards parents in general, and believe me, I don't think there's ever like a perfect parent. I think we all fall flat. Everybody has their own struggles as a parent, but I think especially within like the mental health community and the neurodiversity community, there's a lot more judgment. There's a lot of assumptions that if someone's going to be on a tablet, they're just letting their kid be on TV, or if they're having a hard time in a store, that they're bad parents, or if there's a fight going on between parents, that there's something wrong. I think it's really important to note, especially in such a digital age, there's an evolution of the idea of technology being a complete asset to those in need. And I think also it's so important to pull back the veil a little bit on why we want to judge parents, right? There's a lot of anger out there in the world, but I think if we can support parents and help them solve themselves first, create avenues for respite, create avenues for them to relax and feel their worth, they can support their youth. And then at the same time, I would also say, when dealing with a family member, there is such a power in space, in the ability to separate from an idea for a moment and come back to a conversation when emotions aren't high. And the last thing I would say is, and this goes for anyone of any age, no one's their best self, I think, right now, right? We all have the potential and the ability to be better. We all have the room to grow, whether or not we're in our 30s, 60s, 70s, or even if we're 9, 15, 2. We're all going to be better if we try to be. And I think part of that is understanding and honoring the fact that in those moments we're going to fall. But when we put in the effort and the patience and the empathy, we can help ourselves be better. And I think that's something that you should focus on. And then a little sillier, have fun with your family. Enjoy those moments where joy is a thing. Don't put too much pressure on always being productive or always just trying to fit that rigid sense of what someone should be, and laugh and love and enjoy time together.
Yeah, beautiful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So, Thomas, with regards to the community that you're involved in, what would you say are some of the challenges that you guys face in dealing with not only people who are within the community, but also in spreading the knowledge that helps others outside of the community to be supportive of what you are doing and to understand how important it is to be all inclusive with regards to dealing with the challenges of neurodiversity.
So I think a big one right now is just the idea of the words like inclusive.
Yeah.
There's a lot of anger towards that, but I think a lot of the reason for that is the anger, right? Both
Uh,
sides are very angry at each other. If one person doesn't understand, someone else on the other side gets mad. I think when we talk about inclusivity, one of the things I think to simplify it down is the idea of someone being able to get into a retail store when they don't have the ability to open a door,
mhm.
or to have the ability to enter a library safely, or even
Right.
more importantly, to have youth go to a space where they could be quiet or be loud, but ultimately be safe, right? These
Yes.
are some of the core aspects of inclusivity. And I think if we look at it less of how do you not understand or why are you doing this, and remove it from some political mindsets or some very biased other mindsets, we can look at inclusivity as just including human beings and making spaces work best for business owners, for the community, for whatever you want it to be. And so right now that's a big part of it. But on top of that, I think it's also there is just a lot of mindset about making it hard. Like there are people who are having a hard time accessing things,
Yeah.
finding out things are out there that can support them, that can honor them, that can help them access their community. And so right now getting information out is hard, but
Yeah.
it's worthwhile.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Thomas. Gabriella?
If someone is feeling stuck in a cycle of a negative cycle, a negative thought pattern or mindset, what's the first step you would give them to help them shift towards having a strength based mindset?
So the first thing I would say is just give yourself a break. I think so often depression is
Wow.
rooted in our own personal
Yeah.
expectations. And I think
Mm.
the ability to step back, um, and especially understand the idea that happiness is the end goal for a lot of people, in my opinion, is very flawed.
Yeah.
Happiness is an emotion at its core. It's not meant to stick around. It's actually deeply unhealthy if you're happy like
All the
all the
time.
time. It's
Yep.
not
Yes.
Yep.
human.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and so I think when we step back and acknowledge there may be people who want you to think that you'll always be happy, or there are businesses that profit off that mindset, or the idea even that love is this eternal thing that is perfect and it's all you need. These are not realities. They're not rooted in even just a human mindset. But if we can step back and honor that depression, honor our moments, understand that there are things that are more valuable, like being contented, or even just understanding why our emotions are happening that day and understanding how to move past them, those hold more value than happiness ever will. But it's also so important to understand that that starts with removing our expectations, that depression is not human. It is, but it's also understanding that when we understand those emotions, we can move forward.
Yeah. Wonderful. So we're coming to the end of the program. We just have about 8 minutes to go, and I'd like to give the producer, if he has any questions at this moment, he could probably type them in the chat, or whoever's in the audience. I'm only seeing Gracie being represented now, but there are always people there somewhere in the background looking. You can now punch your questions in. Thomas is willing to answer, and he's going to give you the response based on what we have been discussing so far. The benefits of a strength based mindset with Thomas Wilson and how we deal with challenges, particularly for those who are in the neurodiverse society or community, as we prefer to use that word instead. As they consider that, Thomas, I'd like you to tell us what you see as a future perspective for people with. Is there going to be some level of increase with regards to AI, or are we just going to continue to focus on the basics and then develop from there, especially based on the programs that you're using now?
So I think AI is interesting. I think it's a really powerful tool. I think with any tool within humanity, we have to know how to use it well, right? Like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can't just blame, like if we use a hammer and we like hit a nail wrong, we can't just blame the hammer. We have to understand why we did that. We have to retry. And I think with any tool or any program, it's really important to note that we have to be accountable and not just remove the human self, from any program, especially because accountability is such a rare, beautiful thing. And I try to implement it in my day to day in my work, and I can tell you people respond to it better and more cohesively than a lot of things. And I'm not here to say, like, you know, we have to apologize for everything we do wrong all the time, especially if it's antagonized or there's something else going on. But to know how we use tools, whether they're mental health or whatever, and know how to use them well in an empathic manner is huge. And then to carry that out with the intention and the knowledge to know how to use those wisely is very influential, and necessary in the evolution of human assets.
Oh, thank you, Thomas. Okay, so Gabriela, you have time for one more question for our guests.
No problem. If what advice would you give to a neurodivergent child who may be listening, or a parent who may be listening, who may be struggling with this mindset, having that strength based mindset? What advice would you give to that parent or to that child to boost, whether it be their confidence, or overcome bullying, or whatever situation or issue they may be facing? What advice would you give to them now?
I would say separate yourself from that thought process. Do what you need to reset mentally. The greatest tool against strength based mindset is being stuck in pessimism. Yes, it's hard to get out of that sometimes, and it's especially if we have a really hard day or an ongoing hard year. But I don't think you're ever going to get to a strength based mindset if you give in to that pessimism and let it exist in your mind freely. Um, and I think the first step to separating that can be something as simple as find something that allows you to just, if it's a cup of tea, if it's a TV show, if it's talking to a friend, if it's honoring, whatever brings you joy, even just in a momentary basis, do it. And it may be moments where that's going to be hard and it's going to take more of that, or going on a walk. All these things can be really weighed down by pessimism. But the other thing I would say to that is continue practicing it, continue going through it. Right? There's a term, I think it was used in a country song where, like, you can walk and walk, but the devil wants to drag you down to hell. Um, but in that, if you keep moving forward, if you keep putting the work in and you keep focusing it can take a really long time, but you are moving one step forward in each of those moments. And if you put in the work and you put in the focus, you can get that thing off your shoulders. You can put that thing to rest. It won't drag you down, because genuine focus, genuine separation from those thoughts, genuine effort is a great way to keep moving forward.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Thomas.
Yeah. Okay, so we will put up the thought of the week one more time as we seek to wrap up. It has been an engaging and absorbing episode with Thomas R. Wilson. So once again, we're going to have the thought of the week for the final time as we wrap up. It says, Yesterday's victories cannot be celebrated today, but tomorrow's achievements can be today's triumphs. And I hope you understand the dichotomy in that. It's a simple thing. If you have a victory today, celebrate it today, the moment that it's achieved. It's the sweetest moment that you're actually experiencing, because it is good to celebrate even the smallest levels of progress that we make in life. And then what happens is that tomorrow's achievements are synonymous with what we can triumph for today, because it can build momentum for the things that we can achieve as we look to go into a brighter day and a better tomorrow. So we want to thank you so much for being with us on this episode of Breaking Out of Depression. We thank you, Gracie Vincent, for your continued commitment and your support. And for those who will be seeing this later on the social media platforms, remember, do all that you can to continue to break out of depression. Any parting words, Gabriella?
Yes, I just want to thank Thomas for all the insight that he would have given us, his knowledge, and we hope and we pray that, going forward, that those that are listening, and even those that would hear the recording when it is aired, that it really impacts and makes a difference when it comes to having that strength-based mindset. It's all about coming back to that place of that human. That is what stood out to me every time he spoke: humanity, and coming back into that place where we need to be, empathetic. We need to be in that place where we care and we are compassionate towards our fellow men. So that was the highlight for me in this entire thing. So thank you so much, Thomas, for sharing all that experience and knowledge. Until next time. Yeah.
Wonderful closing there, Gabriella. So we'll ask Thomas to stick around for just 1 minute after we close. And we want to thank you all for, again, your continued commitment and support. And remember, keep on doing all that you can to continue to break out of depression. Until next time, bye for now, folks. Take care.
Bye.
There ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No, ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No, ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No, ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. Trouble in my way, but daily hear me say, ain't got no way, ain't got no way, ain't got no way, ain't got no way. The harvest is plenty, Lord, but the workers are so few. Ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No, men are dying, Lord, there's just so much work to do. There ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No, ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No, ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No, ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. Trouble in my way, but daily hear me say, ain't got no way, ain't got no way, ain't got no way, ain't got no way. The harvest is plenty, Lord, but the workers are so few. Ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord.